Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Liz Career Coaching Podcast. My name is Liz Herrera, and I am your host. Today's conversation is one that I know will inspire you, especially if you've ever found yourself at a crossroads, wondering what's next, or craving a more meaningful direction in your life and career. My guest, Ashley Jablow, has made it her mission to help people navigate those exact moments. She's the founder of Wayfinders Collective and the creator of Life Design School, a creative studio for people in career and life transition. Ashley is a seasoned facilitator, keynote speaker, coach, and design strategist who brings together design thinking, emotional intelligence, and creativity to spark clarity and action. She's also the artist and author behind 100 Days of Designing My Life, a guided journal series that helps people reflect, reimagine, and reinvent their lives. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Oh, Liz, thank you so much. It's such a treat to be here with you today.
I'm excited to dive into this conversation of designing your life and design thinking with you. So, as we kind of jumpstart our conversation, what does it really mean to design your life? And how does that process differ from just planning and setting goals?
Yeah, what a thoughtful question to start with. So, I think of designing your life or life design as really a creative, a curious, and intentional process. One that really asks you to discover who you are today, define what matters to you, imagine your future and the possibilities ahead of you, and to take iterative action that really looks like small, incremental, daily steps towards your goals. So, planning, goal setting, creating a roadmap, it's all part of it. And it's so much more than that.
Absolutely. I love the word iterating. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah.
Iterating. I think
Yeah.
that's a key thing.
It is a key thing. It is a key thing. It's one of my favorite words, actually. And it's probably one of the concepts of life design that I resisted the most for the longest. I am a lifelong high achiever and perhaps a recovering perfectionist. I have consistently, over the course of my academic career and my early professional career, really only sat on things until I knew they were perfect.
Mhm.
Whether that was I'm not going to raise my hand to answer the teacher's question in class if I know I there's even a shadow of a doubt I might not get it right, all the way to I'm not going to throw my hat in the ring for that job if I can't guarantee that I'm going to get it. Perfection is something I've really struggled with. Let's just put it that way. And so iterate and the concept of iteration, that the notion that I can take a big goal or a wish or a change that I want to create for myself and break it down into small bite-sized chunks, small incremental action steps. I mean, first of all, was totally foreign to me at first, and also felt really vulnerable and risky. Like, what do you mean I'm just going to try something? But actually what I've learned is it really is the key that unlocks sustainable and authentic change in your career and in your life. And there are lots of reasons for why we would want to iterate. I'm happy to share more about that, but it is the step, the behavior, the mindset that I have had to work most intentionally on myself. And I've come to believe now that everything can be an experiment, everything can be prototyped. And there are so many benefits to working in that way that, you know, if you just wait to rip off the band aid, take it from my experience, it doesn't always work.
You have to try things and take risks. Now, thank you for sharing a little bit of your personal kind of experience and being that perfectionist. And I feel like a lot of people that find themselves in that space, that's what kind of holds you back from moving forward. You're stuck. So, what was the defining moment in your life that pushed you to apply design thinking?
Yeah, I mean, so yes, I have had a long history of being a high achiever, as I said, and essentially reaching for the biggest, baddest, coolest thing I could achieve. That's just, I don't know, it's part of my DNA. I grew up in Silicon Valley. It was just like in the air. We all want to achieve and be successful. And I really, in many ways, I've been very fortunate that a lot of that reaching and striving has worked out for me. So I've worked at some of the most well known and well respected brands and organizations in the world. I learned so much through those experiences. Um, and I, let's be honest, my ego kind of liked it. You know, it felt good. It felt good to be connected to those organizations, to have job titles that people would ooh and ah over. And and I was also, I mean, I give a lot of credit to young Ashley. I really felt like I was doing meaningful, important work. And so I'm very proud of my work history. That said, there was a time when I was at sort of what I would call like the pinnacle of my success, at least outwardly, where people would have looked at me and said, "Wow, Ashley, look at what you've achieved." And at that moment in my career, I first of all felt deeply unfulfilled. Like I knew that there was what everyone was seeing of me, and then there was how I was feeling inside about the work that I was doing, and the misalignment that I felt between sort of the disconnect between like Ashley at work and Ashley in life. And it was around that time I started working with a coach who had just, she was my first coach, the most transformative experience working with my coach, Melanie. And I landed what I thought was my dream job and really felt like, okay, I have arrived, like here I am standing at the top of this mountain. And it was a great job until it wasn't. And then about 10 months in, I got unexpectedly laid off.
Mm.
And again, what a bruise to my ego. And also, really so emotionally difficult getting the rug pulled out from under you like that. And that was really the moment when I had to reconcile first with the question, or grapple with the question of like, where am I really going? Like what am I really here to do, and who am I here to be, even more than that? And that was the moment when I realized, I'd been working in innovation and design thinking for many years at that point. I had a set of methods and mindsets in my toolkit that I had been teaching other people to use to solve problems or to generate new creative solutions. And I realized that I could take those tools and really turn them on myself to experiment with redesigning where I was going, really, again, in service of who I wanted to become. So that was my first attempt at taking those design thinking methods and bringing them into the realm of career and life design. And now, gosh, what a privilege to get to help other people do the same.
What an incredible toolkit to have, and to
Absolutely.
recognize that you can implement it in your own life. What I love about design thinking is the control that you have, right?
Mm,
Like bringing control into the situation. And things happen unexpectedly, and a lot of people today, right, that are losing jobs and getting that news that maybe they were thriving, and it's like, oh, it's over now, what? And yes, it's emotionally draining and such a difficult experience for people to go through, like you said, like the ego, but there's just so much identity and connection and so much that goes along with it, right? But reminding people like, okay, you can control aspects of certain things, and it's like the problems, like what how can you solve these problems, how can you move forward?
yeah.
And I think about wayfinding. So you are the founder of Wayfinders Collective. What inspired you to create it, right? In addition to your personal experience, and what does wayfinding mean?
Yeah. So it's such a juicy question, and I think maybe even before, if I can just build on this notion of control. Um, you know, to your point, I love design thinking, and I love that as a set of tools for creative problem solving in your career or your life. And I might yes and it and say it is control, but I think even more than that, it's agency.
Mm,
And I think the ability to feel like you are in the driver's seat of your career and your life, you may not be able to control if there's traffic on the highway ahead of you, right? But you can decide, is this the road I want to stay on, or do I want to take an exit, or do I want to go in a different direction? Or, I mean, the metaphor continues to pull over at the rest stop and like take a break, right? But I think you're right. There's something about feeling that self determination that I can be creative, I can be curious, I can be intentional, and it's all here for me and working with me. So I love that. So yeah, so Wayfinders Collective. So I said when I got laid off, I decided to turn my tools on myself, and I created what I called a 60-day sprint to redesign my career. And you know that expression, we make plans and the universe laughs, right?
mm.
So, of course, 60 days was a little ambitious to quote unquote figure it all out. But over the course of it was a summer, I spent a lot of time engaging again in these four steps of life design: discovering, defining, imagining, and iterating. And I got to the end of my 60-day sprint, and I will never forget. I was on an airplane flying on a red eye from Portland, Oregon, back to Washington, D.C., where I was living at the time. And you know, when you're on a red eye flight, Liz, you're either like asleep, and if you
Mm.
are, more power to you, or you are awake and seething in the dark because you are not sleeping. Like, I think those are the only two options when you're on a red eye. So I was the latter. I was sitting in the dark with my eyes closed, just so frustrated. First, because I was awake, but also because at the end of this sprint that I'd created for myself, I felt no closer to figuring out what I was going to do. Like, I just felt like, how on earth is this ever going to fit together? And as I sat there in the dark, out of nowhere, the words creative wayfinding popped into my head. And as I almost like picking up a rock and sort of holding it in your hand and turning it around and seeing all the different facets of it, I sat with this notion of creative wayfinding and realized that that's actually what all of us are doing all the time, right? We are navigating our way through work and life in one of the most universal human experiences, like asking that question, who do I want to be, and how do I show up in the world, and what is my purpose, and how do I get there? I mean, these are such rich universal questions, and yet more often than not we try to answer them by ourselves, right, in isolation. So I thought a lot about, maybe it was, I mean, I wasn't flying over the ocean at that point, right? But I think, and I remember at the time thinking about wayfinding in a nautical context, right? So, you know, navigating the open ocean, you're using the currents and the position of the stars and the wind speed and the temperature and your own internal wisdom to find your way along the water. And yeah, I mean, truly, I walked off that red eye flight having not slept a wink, but so energized and purposeful around this idea of creating a community of wayfinders. And literally, Wayfinders Collective was born as I walked off that airplane.
That's incredible. I love that story. I love just when people have epiphanies or those moments and that it was energizing.
Yeah,
I think that is like the indicator that you are onto something and something that aligns with you. It's like you found your purpose
yeah,
as you were kind of battling with what is my purpose?
Yeah, it came. It came and I think, being able to listen to those, the words, the ideas and nurture them. It's something I've gotten more practiced with, but I'm so grateful wherever that inspiration and insight came from. I mean, that was 8 years ago and I've been running Wayfinders Collective ever since.
Wow. I feel that being on that flight provided you that space to process and think, and
Absolutely.
it's like almost forced you to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because that summer I spent a lot of time walking,
Mhm.
just like pounding the pavement. And I spent a lot of time listening to podcasts, actually. And I carried a small pocket notebook with me wherever I went. And I would just write quotes and questions and ideas. And so I think you're right. As I reflect back on that time, it was partly the maybe the openness that I had prepared for, right? Through all of that walking and all of that, just like trying to absorb what's out there in the world. And then like make it my own and have that quiet space on the plane where I could just sort of churn through it. Yeah, I walked off that plane just so inspired. Like, how do I get an LLC? Like, what do I do? How do I do this? So yeah, I'm thankful for that gift wherever it came from.
It just clicked.
Yep.
So one of the things that I experience when working with clients or students, professionals, is that pressure of having to commit to something, right?
Mm,
Like sometimes people are stuck because they're like, well, I don't want to make the wrong decision. So then they're paralyzed. That's when they're stuck. But I love the idea of prototyping and when it comes to design thinking or designing your life. What are some simple practical ways that people can prototype when looking into different career paths or making a pivot?
yeah. It's funny because I think about when I first started hearing the word prototype, again, the perfectionist in me was like, nope, stay over there. Like I remember when I worked at IDEO, the design thinking company, we had a literal workshop where people would go to build models and other types of prototypes. And to be honest, I'm not sure I ever put one toe into that room. Like it was not for me. That was not my space. And now, over the years, I've gotten to a point where I truly believe absolutely everything can be prototyped. And when we say prototype, what we're really talking about is approximating something in service of learning something, right? So we never run an experiment or prototype something um, just because we want to like that the expression like move fast and break things. We're not interested in doing that. What we want to do is we want to learn about the direction we're thinking of going in, right? So when we experiment and we could swap in the word iterate for this as well. When we come up with one small action that we can take, a few really like magical things happen. The first is that we get ourselves unstuck. So we actually create forward progress by doing something. As much as we love to think about things, right? We have to do something. So we create forward progress by doing things. We get ourselves unstuck by prototyping. We also get smarter. Again, like you try something and you say, do I like it? Was it interesting? Was it fun? Do I want to do more of this? Or maybe, ooh, I hated that. That's also really important learning, right? Um, when we prototype, when we iterate, we also build momentum and we build confidence in ourselves. Like we start to see that what we're setting out to do can be actually accomplished, it can be achieved, which grows our confidence and actually grows our sense of self trust that like I can set a goal and I can follow through on it, which is really exciting. And finally, what we learn through prototyping, what we enable, I guess, through iteration, is we actually reduce the risk of the ultimate choice that we want to take. So a great example, especially I know like during the pandemic, everybody was doing like their sourdough starters, right? Maybe one or more of your listeners, Liz, might have thought to themselves, maybe I should become a baker. Like, I love sourdough. Maybe I should just like quit my job at a tech startup and go like become a pastry chef because I love it, right? Now, every once in a while, quitting cold turkey and going into something completely different, like if that's your speed, more power to you, right? But often what happens when we rip off the band-aid is we find that actually it's not great for our bank account. It's not great for our nervous systems, right? It's not the speed and pace of change that really kind of works well in most cases. So if you were thinking about, maybe I want to go be a pastry chef, how could we begin to prototype that? Well, I like to ask the question of what is the smallest, fastest, cheapest thing that you could do or try right now to learn the most. So, again, really big idea, all the way down to how do we make this bite sized? And maybe that looks like grabbing the cookbook, the baking book off the shelf that you bought a year ago but you haven't cracked open. Like, is there a recipe you want to try? Let's just bake a little bit and see, did you enjoy that? Was it okay? Did it feel good to measure out all those specific quantities? Or did you find yourself you just wanted to like chuck in the baking soda and didn't really care about, the measuring, right? Maybe from there, once you say, I loved baking that, I'm going to sign up for a pastry workshop. It's one Saturday afternoon. I'm going to give it a try. Do I like being in a commercial kitchen? Do I enjoy being around other bakers? Right? So when you are prototyping, you're experimenting and you're learning as you go so that after a number of experiments, you are then able to say, you know what, I've vetted this idea. And I think I do want to become a pastry chef. And so maybe I need to go to pastry school. I don't need to start my bakery tomorrow, right? So each prototype really builds on the one that came before it. And again, as you keep practicing these small steps, you're actually reducing the risk of the big dream, of the big change that you want to make.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you shared that example because, we talk about prototyping, but sometimes people are like, "Well, how do I start? What does that actually mean? What does that entail?" And it's such a great strategy. I work with university students and I love using the concept of prototyping. So, they want to go into healthcare. I'm like, "Okay, well, maybe volunteer at a hospital, do an internship, take a class. Is this something you actually enjoy? Because you don't know where you'll thrive or what you enjoy unless you get a little taste for it.
Yeah,
Then you can
yeah.
decide, right? We're gathering data about ourselves.
Oh, I love that idea of gathering data about ourselves. Yeah. And the thing is, again, because I didn't identify as someone who prototypes for a very long time, but I want to name, we actually do this really regularly in other areas of our lives. So if you have ever written out talking points before you go into a meeting with your boss, that's a prototype, right? If you've ever asked someone, hey, I wrote this email, could you read it and just tell me like how does it sound to you? That's a prototype. If you've ever like again in the theme of baking or cooking, if you've ever said I'm hosting people for a dinner party and I'm going to try this recipe before they come over to see if I like it, that's a prototype, right? We prototype when I mean goodness, even like building a Pinterest board of like, I think I like this decoration for my bedroom, and starting to get inspired by what you're finding online. There are prototypes everywhere that we engage with all the time. We just don't always think about it that way. But sometimes it's helpful to see it already happening.
Yeah, and I think that's what's helpful about working with a coach or a mentor, that they can provide you with ideas on things that maybe you hadn't considered that you can try before making that full commitment into something. For sure. So again, part of this process is a lot of self-reflection. And one of the things that I really enjoyed reading about your message is that reflection is not a luxury.
Mm.
But in our fast paced world, how can we make reflection feel doable and not like just another item on our checklist?
Yeah, yeah. I it well, first I have to just say it is doable. It is doable. And I think often people walk around with rules or mental models of what reflection should look like or must look like in order for it to count. So, a great example, I self published last year a set of guided reflection journals. And I actually didn't realize until I put these journals out into the world that the word reflection and even the word journaling can be kind of triggering for people. Because there is, especially for my kindred spirit recovering perfectionists out there, we have a certain mental model for what good looks like when it comes to writing in a journal or reflecting more broadly. And so when I think about reflection, what I'm really talking about is being curious and noticing. That might take the form of sitting with a pen and paper and journaling. For some of us, that might be what it is. For others, it might be taking a walk and opening up your phone and a voice memo app and just starting to talk and noticing what's coming up. What am I thinking about? What am I feeling? How am I approaching my day? It might just look like 10 seconds of slowing yourself down, right? Of sitting and breathing, 3 inhales and 3 exhales. I think reflection is a muscle, and for many of us, it is an underused one that needs more strengthening. But really, when you think about it, and to make it like very practical, I have been in situations where I have been unhappy in one job and I have gone to get a new job only to realize that the problems from the last job had followed me to the new one, right? If you've ever suffered from, I call it buyer's remorse for job seekers, right? Then you know it's not just about problem solving. It's not just about like, I hate my job, so I need a new one. If you want to get to a resolution at the end of this, that's meaningful and that's truly authentic to you, because there's no one else but you. Like you are the original Liz, right? Just like all of your listeners are the original only versions of themselves. If we want to get to a unique and authentic place, we have to start with knowing who we are, and that's reflection.
Yeah, I appreciate that fresh perspective on reflection. I personally love reflection. So for me, I'm like, oh, I like to journal. I do all the things, but I never really thought about how reflection can transpire in different ways. And I think that makes it doable and practical, as you mentioned. And I find that some individuals who are entering their job search process or making a career pivot, that's probably the last thing that they do, or they don't do it at all. And it is the foundational piece of making any type of career pivot. And just like you said, right? Like the problems followed me. And that makes sense why that would happen if you're not reflecting.
Yeah, and let's be honest, reflection is deeply
Mhm.
uncomfortable, right?
Yes.
I mean, let's just be real. Like, it's hard to sit in the soupy mess of being a human being,
Mm.
right? And especially when you are unhappy, when you feel like you need to solve an urgent problem yesterday. right? Maybe that's around your job. Maybe that's around a health goal or some other solution that you're seeking. No one enjoys sitting in the discomfort of how is this all going to work out? Right? So let's just be gentle with ourselves that reflection can be, I mean, maybe you and I are kindred spirits in this way because I love a good reflection session. I'm doing it
Yes.
constantly. But I've learned not everybody enjoys it and not everybody is comfortable with it. So again, it can start with taking a deep breath, right? And being present where you are, and even just noticing how is my breathing right now? What is my posture? Do I feel tightness or looseness or constriction? Just noticing without judgment what's here for me right now, that counts, right? Like we're not giving out gold stars, we're not giving out A pluses. It all counts. So the more you can tune in with who you are, what's going on with you today, the more you're going to start being open to asking and answering questions about who you are and what is meaningful for you and what's not working right now. And all of that, you said earlier, like data collection, right? All of that is intelligence gathering to then support you to get to the solution that's actually going to be right.
Yes. And I like what you said about it's really getting to your authentic self. And that's what I find with conversations around reflection and just prompting people to really think about things that maybe they hadn't considered, because it's okay to be you and authentic. And sometimes when people share, like, oh, well, I'm looking for this in my next role, but I know that I shouldn't be thinking about that. I'm like, why not? Like, yes, you should be thinking about that if that's important to you. And so recognizing that it's okay to want certain things that align with your values, with what you care about. And that's what makes you uniquely you.
Yeah. I really have come to believe that if you have a wish in your heart, it's there for a reason. I've come to also learn that I can trust myself with my wishes, that they're not frivolous, they're not self-indulgent, that they are breadcrumbs to pick
Yeah.
up, right? And I mean, I guess one of the questions I've always been asking my whole life is really how can I get to know myself better in service of helping other people know themselves? And so, in that, I've had to get really honest about what those wishes are in my own heart, because the more I can listen to them and turn towards them, the more I can help other people do that too. So I agree with you. I mean, if there's someone who's saying or thinking to themselves, you know, I really know that this is something that's meaningful for me, but like I shouldn't. I need to push it away, or it's not realistic, or it's self-absorbed, or whatever it is. Like, what if you could hold that wish for yourself or that desire without the judgment attached to it and just be curious? What is it trying to tell you? What's important about that? What value or values actually sit in that wish, inside of it? And what might be possible if you actually nurtured that instead of immediately dismissing it?
I love that, with no judgment, right? Because I think we do a lot of that. And you allude to like the self-compassion, having grace, and really empathizing with ourselves is part of this whole journey and process. Now, you talked a little bit about it, but can you talk more about your 100 days of designing my life journal series?
Yes. So, okay, let's go back to March of 2020, right? When the world turned upside down for all of us, an incredibly difficult and traumatic time. At the time, I was making most of my money in my business as a front of the room facilitator. I was working with groups, teaching them innovation methods. And in that moment in 2020, all of my revenue went out the window. Like every plan that I had for the rest of the year for my business was just, dust basically. And not a lot made sense at the time. But the one thing that did seem to make sense to me was to pick up my paintbrushes. And I would never have considered myself an artist. To be honest, Liz, I don't even know where the paintbrushes came from. They might have been my son's, who was 7 at the time. Like, I don't know where those supplies came from. But I pulled them out and I started making art. And I kind of simultaneously had heard about a project on Instagram called the 100 Day Project. And the idea is to make 100 pieces of art for 100 days. And I mean, in hindsight, I'm like, Ashley, life was kind of crazy in March of 2020. But at the time, I remember thinking, well, what else am I doing? Like, I might as well do this, right? So I started making these 3x5 postcards of watercolors that I called the series 100 Days of Designing My Life. And they were a collection of innovation frameworks, design methods, coaching best practices, because at the time I'd already trained as a coach, even just like visuals and metaphors that I'd been playing with in my mind. I decided to put, watercolor paint to paper, so to speak, and I created this series. I made it through 66 days of art every day before life just totally got in the way. And in the end, it took me about 2 years to finish all 100 watercolors. That was in 2022. And between 2022 and 2024, I really sat with this question of what am I going to do with these things? Because I knew for me personally, the project felt almost finished, but it didn't feel complete. But then I'd also started sharing them with, on social media and with my coaching clients, and even carrying them with me in my purse just to like keep them close. And I kept getting such incredible feedback from people. And it just like I just sat for a very long time with this question of what could they become? And I was in February of 2024, I was in a wine bar in New York City, of all places, with my mom and one of our very good friends. And it just, in the conversation, it just kind of emerged. I should create a set of journals. Now, I had thought about maybe it's a card deck, maybe it's a calendar, maybe it's a mug. Like, I had no idea. But it was, again, that convergence, like we were talking about when I was on the airplane. It just kind of all came together, and I realized this is a set of journals. There are 4 steps in life design: discover, define, imagine, and iterate. What if I curated each of these 100 postcards into a collection so that 25 are about discovery, 25 are about definition, and so on. And truly that was the beginning. So in March of 2024, I committed to creating these journals. By October of 2024, I had written and published all 4 of them. I was like a woman on a mission. I have no idea how I did this so quickly. But yes, by October of last year, I was holding all 4 books in my hands. And it's been the most incredible and gratifying process, both to make something that's personally meaningful to me, but even more so to see people start to use them and benefit from them and know themselves more deeply through the questions and the art that I've provided. Oh my goodness, it's kind of addictive. I want to make more. I want to do more.
I love that story. That is incredible. And congratulations
Thank you.
for arriving to that. But what I find interesting is that even so, you didn't really know what the finished product was going to look like. You just, went through the process. And I mean, again, talk about life design, right? Like you just walked us through your own experience of that and really doing things kind of as they went and you enjoyed it. And you're like, well, I'm going to do something with this eventually, but it all aligns with your purpose. And it's it is what you do and how you coach people and the resource that you are. And what a gift to be
Thank
able to
you.
create this product, this resource rather, I would say, for people who are stuck and that need that guidance.
Yeah, it's been really, really special. In fact, just was it last week? I have never done anything like this before, but I threw myself a party. And I threw the party in honor of the journal's first birthday
Hmm.
and gathering my community here in Richmond, Virginia. It was the most exciting and also slightly terrifying experience to celebrate a creative project that I'm really proud of, and to start even, a year later to reflect on not just what that process was like, but what it put in motion for me, for my business, and for who I am, and even more so for the people who've gone through the journal, who've used it. I mean, I've received photos of people taking their journals to the beach in Costa Rica. I've heard about people using the journals in yoga retreats, even to deepen their conversations with their partners over the dinner table, or talk with their graduating high school senior about some of these topics. So it's just so neat to see them take on a life of their own. And I'm just so thrilled to get to share them with people.
That is so rewarding.
So rewarding.
So you are a master of resources. Are there any other resources you'd like to share with listeners today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can find out more about my journals at my website, lifedesignschool.co. They're all there, so go check them out. As I think you mentioned in the introduction, I have recently launched Life Design School, which is a creative studio for anyone navigating and designing their next chapter, whether that's at work or in life. And one of the things that people really struggle with as they're navigating this path is just feeling really stuck and really desiring clarity. And boy, is that I feel you on that one. It's like I want to get going. I have this problem, but I just don't know where I'm going and I don't know how to get there. So I created a free on demand workshop called the Clarity Kit, where we talk about some very common reasons why we get stuck, really validating that that's a very normal part of this process. I walk you through the 4 steps of life design and how they all work, really, again, to bring that sense of agency and control and curiosity and creativity to your process. And then we actually use one of my favorite life design methods to help you get really clear right out of the gate around what you're trying to accomplish and why it matters. So I would really encourage people to check that out. It's also at lifedesignschool.co/kit for Clarity Kit. And it's totally free. So give it a try and see. It's 30 minutes. See what clarity you get in a half an hour.
That's fabulous. And I will make sure to include all of that information in the show notes. Ashley, how can people connect with you?
Well, I would love to connect with people. So I hope you take me up on this. So I'm on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great place to find me, just at Ashley Jablow. Same with Instagram. I'm very busy over there as well, at least as I have time. And certainly you can learn all about my work and join the newsletter at lifedesignschool.co.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Ashley. This was such a great conversation. I always learn so much, and I do enjoy connecting with kindred spirits. So thank you for being a guest on my show.
Oh wow, what a treat. I'm ready to turn the tables. I want to know more about you, Liz. This is so much fun. So much fun. Thank you for having me as a guest today.